Well, it's great. I've part of being a composer is, and part of the joy of being a composer is that you work in a solitary room and you create something. Part of the frustration is that sometimes it takes a while for these things that you've given birth to actually come out into the world. And just like having a lot of kids, some kids come out and they're just all fully formed and they're speaking in full sentences, and other kids, have challenges. They have issues that they need to work on, or maybe they need to overcome certain things, or whatever the things are. So I feel like I have a bunch of kids in my pieces, and some of them, come out easier than others. For the guitar concerto, because of the nature of the piece, and because it's a work for classical guitar where we are doing stuff that really hasn't been done on the instrument, and Ellie and I have been evolving this piece ever since the premiere. I mean, we've been coming back to it. Fortunately, we've been able to have some wonderful conductors working and giving us performances of it. So we've had a number of performances of the piece, and with each performance it gets better and better. But we really haven't had a recording of the work that represents it. So when people want to know and go to the work, a work doesn't exist unless you have a recording. Well, of course it does. It's a score, and it's first in my head, and then it goes to the score. But it really doesn't exist for others unless you've got a representative recording. So I always feel like the real moment of birth for a piece is when you get not only the first performance of the piece that really truly represents it, but somebody has actually recorded that so that others can hear it. It's great for people to hear it in the room, but then you want to be able to show others. And sometimes that can take longer. So with the guitar concerto, it's taken this long. It's taken about 5 years for us to really get to this point. And so it's pretty exciting for this piece, I think, for us to really get something, get us all in a room and get it to the mature place where we can actually, have the piece, and here's the piece, and, go listen. So that in and of itself is wonderful. Likewise for the other pieces, the other pieces on the record, Evening Prayer was written for the Boston Youth Symphony, which was really the first orchestra that it was called the Greater Boston Youth Symphony at the time. I grew up in Boston. I played the timpani, and I actually went and toured with them in 1971 because they played a work of mine which I conducted called Overture Antigone, and we went to the Edinburgh Festival, and I conducted in the Edinburgh Festival. It was the last time I was in Scotland. And so they, for the 50th anniversary in 2007, asked me to write a piece for them, which I did, and they toured Europe with it. A piece that was very dear to my heart. But for whatever reasons it was, since 2007, I haven't I've had professional orchestras play many of my pieces. This piece has not been played by professional. It's only the Boston Youth Symphony, and the premiere performance of that is a marvelous recording. But it's very exciting for me to get a recording of this piece, which means a lot to me, with an orchestra of the caliber of RSNO, so that people can hear it and it can be heard. So in a way, this is a great opportunity, I think, to have this piece be heard as well. And then Ground O is part of is a very short piece, which was actually part of a collection that I wrote it started off as a piccolo and piano collection called Souvenirs. And there were 6 pieces. And they were all different because they're all different reactions to different things, or sourced from different places. And Ground O was written a month after September 11, 2001. And I lived in Manhattan. I've lived in Manhattan for the last 35 years, teach at Juilliard. The day of 9/11, a very close friend of mine was over at my house and went to work the next day and died in the second tower. And we actually saw the second tower go down. So, it was one of those things where I am very suspicious of artists making political statements or making, writing things about external things for the sake of writing about them. So I wrote this piece and I didn't call it I had no title for it, and I actually used it in the collection of souvenirs. And it took me about 3 or 4 years to actually call it what it was and acknowledge that this is what was going on in the piece, because I really couldn't bring myself to do it. But it was literally the only thing that I could do following that. So it was in this little collection, and the collection sort of grew, and there was it's had different iterations. It became a sort of a string orchestra, harp, and timpani piece, and that piece came into there, and then that part of it is called Ground O, and then it was orchestrated for Gerard Schwartz for a commission for the Seattle Symphony into a large orchestra, which this is what is being recorded on this CD, is the orchestra version of that little piece, that little piano and originally piano and piccolo piece, which is become this rather elegant, very, very solemn and filled with evocative tintinnabulations and just echoes of things, which is something which started off from a very profound place for me. So it has a lot of meaning, this piece. So that's the other piece on the record.